Welcome back to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Plisch from University of Wisconsin-Madison, 21 years total in law enforcement. He's also a veteran of the U.S. Army. He served in every single rank and has been Chief of Police for the last 2 years. Wellness is something that's a huge priority, and he also has a strong focus on employee engagement in the workplace. Welcome to the show, Chief Plisch. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Paige. I appreciate the invitation.
I'm looking forward to it. There's some interesting topics that I don't think I really cover a lot on the podcast. So I'm excited to dive into it. But before that, give us a little bit of background on you. So you started in the Army, you served there for 3 years?
4 years total.
4 years. Okay.
Spent 4 years.
4 years
Yeah.
and then entered law enforcement. So give us a little bit of
Yeah.
background.
So really, started my professional career working in the military. I was a communications officer, did a deployment overseas, which was tremendously influential in my life and specifically my life as a leader. That helped to shape, I think, who I am now and the ways that I think about leadership. When I left the military, I knew that I wanted to get into policing. It's something I've wanted to do since I was probably about a fourth grader. Had a great experience connecting with a police officer. My mom worked in a field where she was in contact frequently with law enforcement and in helping children. So knew I wanted to do that. And I had some exposure actually to campus law enforcement before applying here at UW-Madison. And I knew that campus law enforcement was a really unique, adventure. There's always new stuff happening. There's amazing events on college campuses, but I knew I wanted to be at a larger agency, someplace that had access to programs and research and availability to do interesting things. And UW-Madison was that place for me.
Love it. Thank you. So you said that you started in the Army and that has shaped your viewpoint on leadership. How do you view leadership today?
I mean, leadership is about taking care of people to accomplish a mission. So much of our job, unfortunately, we get tangled up in the management of projects and not leading people. And it really has to be about people. We have to take people's needs into consideration. We have to work to provide motivating factors for individuals to do the work that we do. For me, leadership is about getting folks engaged in the work that they do, finding ways to, engage people in this line of work. We've got officers that love to do traffic enforcement. I want to find ways to make sure that they're engaged, but they're also balancing their career. And we got people that don't want to do traffic enforcement. They want to be out doing community policing type efforts and just finding ways to create opportunities to get them engaged in what makes them tick is incredibly important in leadership. And, certainly advocating for people is important, but taking care of people has to be the center of what we do as leaders.
Do you think that being able to identify those things that make people tick or get people excited, do you think that that all starts with communication, or how are you able to identify those things with your people?
I think it's definitely communication. And as leaders, we talk a lot. This is probably like the fourth or fifth meeting that I've been at today where I'm going to talk a lot. Mm-hmm. I think more as leaders, what we need to do is sit and listen. We need to hear what people's desires are within their career. We need to hear what makes them tick, as you put it. I think it's just incredibly important that we listen to our employees. Certainly, there's things that we can't do. We've got bureaucracies to deal with, but really taking the time to listen to what people's needs are is incredibly important. And then finding those opportunities and learning and growing with our employees. As a field training officer, and as we promote new field training officers here, one thing that I tell folks is it's your first step into leadership to become a field training officer, and you're going to learn so much about the way that we do this job, because you're going to run into things when you've got a new officer that you're training. They're going to do something one way that you're like, boy, I've never seen it done that way, or that's not a way that I would have done it, but I like it. I can take something from that. And as a leader, I think there's a measured amount of humbleness that needs to happen to realize that I can learn from everybody, people that have been here for 10 years more than me, or people who have just come on the job yesterday have something to teach me. But the only way that I'm going to get there is if I listen.
Okay, so you said a couple things that got me a little bit excited. I was like, yes. So this differentiated between hearing and listening. For you to be like, we have to listen. Hearing someone and listening to someone completely different, right? And
Very
when
different.
you're listening to someone, that means that you have an open mind and you're considering what they're saying, right? You're willing to actually listen to what they're saying. And so hearing and listening, two completely different things. But I love that you said as a leader, you have to have a certain level of, would you say, measured amount of
Measured, yes,
humility,
humbleness.
humbleness. What a great statement. I love that. And I think that at some point, and maybe this is my own experience, I don't know if you can relate to this or not, but I had maybe been taught this, or maybe I had convinced myself that the more I progressed in my career, the more I had to give the perception that I was perfect and that I knew everything. And I had a mentor tell me that, like, if you don't know something, it is so much better to say, I don't know, but let me find out, than it is to pretend to know or to BS your way through it. And I think that that takes an amount of humility or humbleness to be like, I'm not all knowing. I don't know all the things. But the caveat to that and what you said is, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to continue to develop yourself? And I agree with you. Like the people who I strive to be, who I have the most respect for, are those people. The people who don't come in acting like they know everything. They actually know that they don't know everything, and they're still excellent at what they do. But they understand that they have room for growth. And I think that that is something to strive for. We should always be striving to be better, knowing that we don't know everything. So thank you for saying that, because I think that you do have to have that little bit of humility, humbleness, and authenticity too.
Mhm. And I don't think it's a matter of like saying, I totally agree with you that saying I don't know is incredibly important when you don't know. But then taking that next step of not just saying, well, I'll find out and get back to you, but hey, let's figure this out together.
Yep.
Let's learn about this together and find out, because you have a set of resources and I have a set of resources, and maybe we can pool those resources together to figure out where we need to go or what the answer to this problem is. And that's something I think that we're starting to really train on in our training officer program. We're using a training program called PTO, Police Training Officer Program, based on what's now known as the Reno model, which is getting people together to problem solve and recognizing that I don't know the answer to violence. And I don't think, there's a single person that has that answer, but together we can figure out issues, and we might fail. We have to be okay with failure in problem solving, but together we can work through these issues.
I love that, creating more of a team environment and team mentality within the organization. Because we know that a lot of times, there's maybe some competitiveness and there's isolation that happens. But as an organization, for you to say, no, we're going to encourage problem solving as a team and more of a team environment. I relate a lot of wellness and the things that we talk about to sports, like the only way you're winning the Super Bowl is if you do it together. We've seen it time and time again where you have these people who are individually great and they flop because they're not working together as a team. And the teams who maybe don't have the star players, but they work really well together, they're the ones they're winning the big game. So stronger together always, and understanding where's the weakest link and how can you all work together to elevate the team as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of my messages to folks here, not just within the department, but in the community, is that public safety is a team sport. That's a direct quote. Like, public safety is a team sport. We as a police department cannot, on the whole, provide public safety to this community. We have to have our community's involvement. We have to have every member of our department here. It doesn't matter what they do. If they work in finance, HR, IT, if they're in emergency management, everybody here is part of our public safety solutions on campus, and all of our community members are as well.
Yeah, no, I love it. Public safety is a team sport. That'd be the title of the podcast. We'll see.
Yeah. Sweet.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about developing leaders. Do you guys have specific systems or things that you have found to be successful for, succession planning or, developing those new FTOs? Because we know FTOs kind of set the culture within the organization. What do you guys do specifically to help prepare people for leadership roles?
Yeah, so I think this is a spot, honestly, that we're lacking, that we're trying to catch up on in some regards. We have in the past done sort of a leadership academy where we talk about the fundamentals of leadership. I feel like there's a lot of great training programs out there. I attended Northwestern. Northwestern was a great primer to the Northwestern School of Police Staff and Command. Great primer to like how budgets work and how case law around personnel actions. That's the process piece, and we can teach people the process piece today, tomorrow, next week, whenever they become a supervisor. I think the more important part that we're working on trying to train folks is how to be a leader that promotes a positive culture, how to be a leader that promotes employee wellness, even if it's not important to you, and how do we get to that care piece? And that's really my two assistant chiefs right now are working on creating a leadership development program, not just for our first line leaders, but those aspiring to be a first line leader, to get them in this mindset of like, you individually are part of our culture, and you help to get to create the culture that we want to have here at UWPD. So really important to be thinking about that, not just I'm showing up today because I'm earning a paycheck, and I'll go out and do my calls. I'll do what I need to survive today and next week and get my paycheck. But like, what is it that you want to do here, and what kind of culture do you want to work in? That makes you wake up and go, I get to go to work today. I get the privilege of serving this community today. So that's where I want to see us get to. But that's challenging because we have to have people buy into that. And I think, really when I took over being the chief here, we've really been focused on culture. One of my assistant chiefs constantly says, culture eats policy for lunch. Doesn't matter how good our policies are. If we don't have a good culture that supports people wanting to be here, we're not going to be successful.
Yeah, well, that's the new title now. Culture eats policy for
Culture
lunch.
eats policy for lunch. Yes.
Okay, so there are a lot of things I want to unpack. So one is mindset is so important. So we've all been there, right? And I have to check myself still because, again, I'm not perfect. I think that anyone who's listening can relate to this. There are times where you wake up and you're like, oh, gotta go do the thing, right? I think that is such a normal response that we've all had. And then when I have that now, instead of continuing with that mindset of like, I have to go do this, I now have the ability to check myself and say, no, no, no. I get to do this. I get to do this. And it is so important for us to move forward with positivity and gratitude. And it's contagious, and it does take some self-awareness. It does take practice in action, and we're all going to have our good days and our bad days. But I love that you talked about mindset because I think that is really important. And I think one thing that's helped me a lot, and I don't know if this has helped you too, and you said this earlier, it's about the mission, right? It's about the people and the mission. I always have to go back to my why. Why am I doing this? What is the mission? What is the purpose? And when you can remind yourself that, yeah, sometimes things are stressful, sometimes things are hard, sometimes you feel like you're in the trenches or everything's on fire, but the why and the mission creates that gratitude and that mindset of like, all of this is worth it because I have a North Star. And so I think we have to constantly reinforce that mindset and constantly reinforce the why behind the mission.
Yeah, I like that you use the term North Star. I'm actually having a challenge coin made right now, a Chief's challenge coin for excellent service, that I'm looking for that North Star, that really quick thing that everybody at the department can say, like, this is why we're here. While we have to take care of people are the ones that accomplish our mission. we have to take care of them so that we can do our mission. And I think that North Star is so important, and rediscovering our why. And one thing that we've recently done here at UWPD, we get tons of compliments in from the community. The number of compliments we get far outweighs the number of complaints that we get. And I was like, man, these things come in on a computer system. My assistant prints them out for me so that I can read them. I'll put a little note on it and put it in the employee's mailbox. That wasn't enough. That's not enough to recognize people. So we've got messaging boards up around the department, and we're now starting to put those out so that every employee can see when somebody gets a compliment, and they get to see who it's from. They get to see the narrative of that compliment. And one came in just yesterday, and it's actually somebody that had been arrested and wrote a compliment into the officer, and they acknowledged, like, I did some dumb things, and you treated me with respect. I had dignity by the time that we finished our contact because of the way that you treated me. I think that's phenomenal. That's setting the tone for, like, that's our culture at UWPD. We want people in our community, regardless if they're a suspect in a crime, a victim, just somebody that we come into contact with in a consensual encounter. They should leave feeling like that officer cares about this community. And again, I can tie this back to, but if our culture inside the four walls of the department aren't positive, if our culture isn't something that promotes being kind to people in the community, we're not going to have those types of compliments. So I really want to amplify that, show people, like, this is the work that your coworkers are doing. This is how they're seen in the community, and give people that, that constant reinforcement that this is who we are as an organization. But it has to start within the four walls of our department.
Yeah. Well, and I think that positive reinforcement is often forgotten about. And I think that's a lot of times not just us reinforcing other people, but also us reinforcing ourselves, right? So I think it's so much easier to look at problems, but for you to say, hey, like, yes, there's going to be room for growth. There's going to be time to review the tape, right? Like, even if you win the Super Bowl, like, maybe we're still going to review the tape and we're going to see, like, room for growth, right? Yeah. But it's so important to recognize the good work. And I make this connection a lot because I think everyone can relate to this. But if you were in a relationship with your spouse, right, or you're dating someone, and all they did was point out your flaws, day after day, right? It was, you did this wrong. You didn't do that right. You need to improve here. You need to improve there. It's not going to be a really healthy relationship, right? You're going to get, like, pretty burnt out pretty fast on that. You're going to be like, wow, I don't even want to be here, And I think that is the point, right? It's like, we recognize that if you are constantly pointing out the negative, the stress, the thing for improvement, those relationships, romantically aren't going to last very long. And when we're talking about retention or like a team environment, that relationship won't last very long, right? Or the people within the organization aren't going to be very happy. So for you to say, hey, like, we appreciate you, great job, look at what someone said, like, we want you here, and building that environment, I think, is really, really important, especially when we talk about retention.
I think that's yes, and it's extending that positive feedback from the community that we're here to serve. And far too often, our police officers, not just here, but across the country, only hear the negative. Yeah. And in talking about a relationship, right, the police department has a relationship with the community that we serve. And if that negative feedback is the only thing the officers are getting, or the dispatchers or detectives, it's going to sour that relationship. So to show that, like, hey, the community does care about you. They do value the work that you provide, and they're providing you that feedback directly through this mechanism of compliments that we're putting up in the department. It's not just me saying it. I tell my people that I appreciate them frequently. I think it's more powerful. I hope it's more powerful when it comes from a community member, somebody that they're interacting with on a frequent basis.
I love that you said that they're in a relationship with the community. It's so true. I think that is so powerful. And that relates to wellness, right? We talk about, you said, like, the level of, care that someone's putting out in the community. We know hurt people hurt people. right? And so if someone is coming from a space of negativity, they're not getting the resources or the support that they need, what is their response or the reaction going to be in the community? And then vice versa, right? You said it's a partnership, right? And so I think that everything that you just said about that partnership and having the positive reinforcement and showing up for the community in a positive way, that's wellness for both parties. And I
Right.
know that you really try to take a holistic approach when it comes to wellness within your organization. Can you talk a little bit about what holistic means to you?
Yeah, I think so much in policing, we think about wellness as a physical state. We are starting to think more about policing and heart disease. We're starting to think about all the negative effects of, like, we leave this job at whatever age, 50, 55, 57, whatever that is, and then we're not well. We're not physically well. And while I don't disagree that all that is important, we're doing all kinds of great physical wellness programs here at UW-Madison. We do things like the Stair Challenge at Camp Randall Stadium across the street, which is incredibly exhausting but fun. Running through we've got a running club. We have a weight room and cardio equipment, and we're doing just outdoor physical activities. We have to remember that our brains are just like muscles, right? Our brains are exposed to things like suicides or domestic violence incidents, homicides, and just horrible things that nobody should ever have to see. And we need to work out those muscles too in our brains, right? So we need mental health wellness. You talked about relationships. Cops have a horrible history of relationships and domestic violence, dating violence, alcohol use in relationships. We need to be focused on relationship wellness as well, and provide opportunities for couples or folks in relationships in our department to find ways to retreat together and talk about the stressors of how this job impacts their relationship and ways that they can improve their relationship and communication. I'm very careful when I talk about this in the community, because I don't want our community to think that we're focused on financial wealth. But financial wellness is important too. We've got a lot of officers and employees that have children, and, like, how can we make it so that you are financially well and know things that you might do today when you've got a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, that set you up so that when you're 55 and your child turns 18 and they're ready to maybe go off to college, if that's what they choose to do, that you're well enough off that can happen without you needing to say, I need to stick around for another 10 years because I got to find a way to pay for this. So, we're doing financial wealth, relationship wealth, or wellness, physical health and wellness, mental health and wellness activities, and bringing all those together. And it's interesting because not everybody wants to go run the Camp Randall Stair Challenge, right? It's a painful experience. So we offer other physical wellness type programming. So we don't have a ton of participation, I would say, in any one thing, but we have a lot of different offerings that people can take advantage of that suit their needs in the wellness space across the whole gamut of the different pillars of wellness.
Yeah, no, I'm on board with you that I think that there's a lot of different facets and dimensions that even maybe we haven't explored to the full extent yet, but it's interesting because when I started in this space 8 years ago, physical was really the only thing. Maybe a little bit of mental, like, kind of, but at least here where I am, it wasn't very progressive at the time. It was like, okay, how can we just, make sure everyone has access to a gym or, like, whatever it is. And now we're starting to see all these different facets of wellness kind of emerge into different conversations. You talked about finances, family, heart health, mental health, physical wellness. There's so many different other ones. I honestly think that connection and communication is a part of wellness. I think that nutrition obviously is a part of wellness. But I also think professional and personal development is a part of wellness. And so I think that there's a lot of different things that we can look at, and understanding that when you have a group of people, everyone's going to be different and everyone's going to want or need different things. I love that you previously, and I want to circle back to this, that you said that really what you're trying to do is create a space where you have the accessibility, but you also have the buy-in and the culture where people understand that just because one thing isn't for you doesn't mean that it's not for somebody else. And so just because you don't want to run up those stairs doesn't mean someone else wouldn't be stoked to run up those stairs, right? And so understanding that we're all in this together and we want everybody to succeed. And so what are the different facets and resources that can be implemented to get there?
I think we've also tried to make sure that the things that we're doing, we can tie back to our mission. I know, in your opening, you talked about the return on investment type, like we need to be able to measure this and the success of these programs. But one of the examples that I can give right off the bat is our physical therapy program. So if we have somebody who's injured, doesn't matter if you're on duty, off duty, if you're feeling a pain in your ankle or a knee or your lower back, we have a physical therapist on contract right down the road where folks can go and get attention for that spot. Because if I'm going to expect you as an employee at a police department to get out of your car, grab a rifle and a shield and run up 2 flights of stairs, well, if you were playing basketball the night before and you hurt your back, we should know about that. The community should know about that, not specifically officers, but we should not be putting officers who are hurting out on the road. To go do really dangerous things. So like our physical therapy program, we've worked with them to create a physical fitness assessment, a physical readiness test for our officers that meets our department standards based on the things that we do here, based on our community. And then we've tied it back to this, like, yes, we're going to do this annual physical readiness assessment for every sworn officer in our department. But we're going to pair you up with a physical therapist to make sure that if you need a workout plan to make sure that you are capable of doing the job that we're asked to do, you can get that workout plan. You can connect with a nutritionist, because when you're working third shift and the only thing that's open third shift is Taco Bell, I want you to know how to maybe meal prep for the entire week so that you can be physically well and eat well and healthy. So we're always trying to tie it back to our mission to make sure that the things that we're doing are relatable for our job, but also improve our performance. You talked about sports psychology, kind of the same concept. Like we want people to be thinking about their work here as their performance, like they're stepping on a football field as they put on their uniform.
Yeah, except the stakes for you guys are a lot higher, and so even more important, right? And so okay, there's a few things I want to say. So one, going back to sports, I will often do a presentation where I have one statement on like a slide, and I'll say who agrees with the statement. And the statement is law enforcement are professional tactical athletes. How many of you agree with this? And you get everyone being like, yeah. It's like, okay, well, if we can have conversations and agree that you are professional tactical athletes, then how do professional athletes train? And if we can look at this and you look at some of the greatest of all time, they're doing all of it. They're doing all of those things. They have someone helping them with their finances. They have someone who's PT. They have someone who's helping them with mobility and stability. They have someone who's helping them with recovery. You have, there's so many things that go into making sure that, I love that you said readiness, that they're ready to hit that field in the best condition that they possibly can, right? And the idea is that you protect your assets, right? Like these teams, and just like organizations, these teams are investing a lot of time and energy and finances into their players, and they are the most important asset. Just as the organization, your employees are your most valuable asset. You cannot operate without your team, right? And so what are those methods? How can you pour the, time and energy and sometimes finances, things cost money, to be able to make sure that when they go out into the field, they're as successful as they possibly can. And you're protecting the assets. And so I think that if we can start having these types of conversations where it's like, hey, we're trying to set you up as if you are a professional athlete because you are, then I think it's more of a strong conversation than it is maybe, the stigmatized, like weak woo-woo that everyone thinks that it is. It's like, no, this is training. This is effective tactical training that's going to help you be successful.
It is. And in the mental health piece too, like to think about the strength of your brain and the resiliency of your brain. We don't want people who have been exposed to so much trauma over their career that they get into the worst situation that they possibly could be, maybe in a direct shootout with someone or in an active killer type situation, and suddenly their brain is not as strong as we need it to be, and they fail at executing the job that they know how to do, that they've been able to train on. But they can't perform when they get to that situation because their brain isn't as strong as it needs to be. So yeah, we absolutely, and it is an investment. It has to be an intentional investment. But thinking about the long-term effects of, if we don't have people that are capable of stepping in and doing the mission that we're asking them to do, especially on the worst day, what could be the worst day of a lot of people's lives, then we don't have a team that can perform.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we don't know when the game is going to happen, right?
Right.
That's going to require the maximum physical effort, the maximum mental effort. So we have to be prepared all the time. We are sort of an insurance policy for communities.
100%. So you kind of circling back to the methods. So you guys have this readiness test that you do annually, and this is required for everybody to do, all sworn officers to do, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So I know that that's a topic, right? Where the question is, should it be mandatory? Should it not be mandatory? What does that look like? And I know you gave a little bit of info on how you're setting people up for success so that they can accomplish this and they can be successful in this test. And you have curated this test to be more specific to the functions that you're seeing within the community that you serve. Are you willing to kind of dive into a little bit of how you've created,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then how you're setting everybody up? Because I think that there's maybe still a lot of, I hate to say fear, maybe it's not the right word, but skepticism in mandating things that, people are going to be disgruntled, or maybe you're going to lose people because they're not going to be able to, be successful in doing it. So if you can give some insights in how you've been successful, I think that'd be really helpful.
Yeah. So we started out with the goal that, there's certainly a standard of physical fitness or physical wellness, I guess, that probably physical fitness that officers should have to be able to do some of the tasks that we're requiring of them to do. So we worked with a physical therapy company to come up with a set of sort of diagnostic tools, because when we looked at the state offered physical readiness test, it's, push-ups, sit-ups, I've never done a push-up at work. Never, it has not been part of my daily routine to go do a push-up before I can conduct a traffic stop, right? Like push-ups. Now, upper body strength is important, and there are ways that we can measure upper body strength that don't involve a push-up. We frequently, we've got a level 1 trauma center here. We see a lot of incidents that result in a use of force by officers, and holding somebody to the ground while trying to handcuff them. We measured that. What does that take for an average person? What's the upward pressure that we're trying to defeat with downward pressure? And we measured that through a set of testing with different devices. We have to decentralize people. That's probably our most frequent use of force is getting somebody off their feet. So what type of pressure and turning motion is required? And we measured that. We do CPR quite frequently. So we measured all of these things that are unique to our community and how we engage in policing. The test actually starts out with jumping a 4-foot fence, or it's a 4-foot barricade. Well, why is it 4 feet? Well, there's a city ordinance in Madison that doesn't allow for fences over 4 feet. So why would we climb a 9-foot wall and climb over that? It just doesn't make sense for our community. So we created this test, but I think what's more important is that we got officers engaged with this, our line level staff, folks that were passionate about physical wellness, folks that were tactical fitness instructors. And we got this cross-sectional group of police officers together and supervisors and managers together to work with a physical therapist to create a test that matched the work that we do here. So once we did that, we went and verified, is this an accurate assessment for us? Can people engage in this in a way that's meaningful? And we did a test group of officers, ran them through it, got feedback, tweaked the test a little bit, separated it then into different sections, and actually made it scenario based of here's your dispatch call. Here's what we're asking you to do here. Here's the scenario we'd like to run you through. And then as we refined it, we had to work with our Office of Legal Affairs, our human resources partners here within the community. And we created a program where we require it. You have to do the annual test. Beforehand, though, you get seen by a physical therapist with a medical license, or it's actual doctors that are doing things like checking blood pressure, doing an interview about how you're doing in terms of physical health. And that's all HIPAA protected. So that's done off to the side of where our tactical fitness instructors are. And those doctors have the ability to say, this employee shouldn't be engaging in this right now. We need to do further assessment. We need to maybe blood pressure is too high. They're not telling us this information, but we need to assess something to make sure that this person can continue doing this. We don't want to put them in harm's way. So I think that's really incredible. And then that employee is offered follow-up services to make sure that whatever physical issue was going on, that is being addressed and treated. So employee buy-in was huge, though. We had to have employees involved with creating the test, with helping us roll out a policy for it. And now we actually have an instrument, too, that let's say somebody blows out an ACL. They're out playing soccer. They come back to work and say, I can't work. I need surgery. They come back a year later. And their doctor says, yep, they're good to go. What we're finding is that doctors are saying, well, you can walk, so you're fine. But they don't understand that that officer has to be able to jump over a wall or chase somebody down on foot. So now we have a document that says, if you're a doctor and you're saying that somebody's good to go back to work, they have to do these different tasks. And we've actually had officers take that to doctors, and the doctor says, yeah, not yet. Not yet. You're not good to go. And then when they do come back to work, when they're cleared by a doctor, they go through the same process. They meet with that physical trainer and MD. They get cleared to take the test. And we've actually had them say, like, I know your doctor said you can come back to work, but you can't do these basic things right now. We're not going to let you continue because we're concerned about your well-being if you do this test. So I think it's both making sure that people are capable of doing the job that we're asking them to do, but we're also showing care for that employee. We want to make sure that they're healthy, and we're not using it as a punitive measure to have people exit the organization.
Wow. That is so cool. Thank you for sharing. I'm sure anyone who's listening really appreciates how you dissected kind of the thought process, but then how you were able to get buy-in and have success with it. So thank you for sharing it. The last thing, I know we're going to run out of time here, and I could talk to you for another hour, but I won't do that to you. I want to talk a little bit about data. This was one of the things that was really interesting. And I think what you just said really kind of shows the inner workings of your processes and how your brain works and how you're able to kind of piece things together in a successful way. But you are a big data person. You want to measure outcomes, measure success. You want to know the ROI on the things that you're doing. Can you talk a little bit about how you're measuring success? What do you define as success? What are those measurements so that you can see the ROI for the initiatives that you're implementing?
Yeah, I think, we're really early, I think, in the stages of doing this, but some of the ideas that we've had so far, for example, we've got a peer support program, great peer support program. They're all exceptionally trained. We're doing our annual mental health wellness checks, a couple of other great mental health support things. We're seeing an increase in referrals to peer support. We're seeing an increase of referrals to our department disability representatives. There are folks that can help with like FMLA paperwork. Well, suddenly we've got people accessing services. And I would look at that and say, well, maybe our programs that we're doing over here are having a positive impact, because now before something becomes a problem, they're connecting with a DDR, or they're connecting with peer support so that they're not taking time off of work. So we're looking at, like, how do we measure workman's comp type claims that we have? So somebody twists their ankle at work, yet they're back to work 2 days later because they went to a physical therapist, when before they would have been off work for a week or more. So I think looking at, and this isn't just internally for the police department. I've gone to a lot of different wellness conferences where I hear people talking about great things. They're talking about implementing, for example, sports psychology, theories to police work. I think it's phenomenal. And then I find myself asking the question, I'm sure it works, but how do we know? How are we measuring this? How are we showing that our performance is actually improving when we're doing things like investing $50,000 in a physical therapy program? And I say that's important because at some point I have to go continue to justify that money expenditure. And in my heart and in my brain, I say, I bet you this is working. I hope it's working. I hope this is taking care of people. But I know at some point we're going to be called to task and say, how do you know? And I think it's a whole combination of things: retention rates, referrals to peer support program, the number of times people are going to see a physical therapist, that's reducing workers' comp claims. I think all of those things are things that we need to measure, and then figure out, is there a special, we talked about individual needs, right? But if an individual only does one thing, or maybe they do two or three things, or maybe there's four things, are those four things the things that we should really be focusing on because we're seeing the best benefit from those four things? Or do we need the menu option of 20 things? Because for me, options 16, 17, 18, and 19 work well, but for you, options 1, 2, 3, and 4 work really well. And we see good results for both of those.
Yeah.
I want to be able to justify to our community. I want to be able to justify to our other stakeholders, people who have the purse strings, because these programs are important. And when budgets start really clamping down in difficult times, these aren't the programs that I want to see go first, because then we suffer issues with retention, and then our recruitment suffers because people talk and say, well, we don't want to go to that place because they had all kinds of officers leave, right? So we need to find ways to measure this successfully, and determine what are the combinations of things that are actually making a difference.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that these things have to be measured, because unfortunately, when budgets get cut, usually wellness and training are the first things to go, right? And so if you're able to show hard numbers and results as to the efficacy of the programs that you have in place, you have a stronger, foot or stance to stand on when it comes to requesting that these things stay. The other thing that really I'm going to say this eloquently. I find it to be very interesting that I will have a lot of conversations with people around at wellness conferences or, other leaders who will say that they're doing certain things, and they have no idea if anyone's using them or not, or no idea what any metrics are at all. And I think that, at least from my perspective and what I do, right? We are virtual. And so if you have a virtual program, you should be able to have numbers. Those people should be able to show you. They can be confidential. It doesn't have to be Bob is doing this, this many times, but there should be tracking mechanisms to understand the engagement, the usage, and the efficacy of the programs that you're using. And so I'm always a little weary about that. If people are no numbers are being shared, to me, my thought is that no one's using it, and that's why those numbers aren't being shared. And so if that's the case, then it's not an effective program, right? If people aren't using it, it's not benefiting anyone, and therefore there's no ROI on what you're doing because nobody's using it. And so how can we get people to use it? But then how can we also measure the success from people using that? And I think that that's the next bar that has to be raised, because if someone's using something, if you have 100 people that are using these things, but they're not seeing results, that is also an issue that needs to be addressed, right? So I think two issues. One, if no one's using it, it's not helping people. But if everyone is using it and no one's having success, that's also an issue. And so that is why I think that metrics are so important. But you're right. Sometimes it is hard to quantify it. It is hard to tie things to one particular thing? Like, are we seeing a reduction in injury because of everything that we're doing in the injury prevention space? Or is it because of this one partnership that we have with our PT doctors? How do we gauge that? So I nerd out on that. So I appreciate the focus, and I'll be interested to see how you guys are able to evolve that over time and be able to get those like hard numbers on the things that you're doing. I think that'd be really cool to see.
I think, and certainly our mental health wellness program, for example, we're doing annual mental health wellness checks. We mandated it. Mm-hmm. And it's not just mandated for sworn officers, it's mandated to every employee of the police department. That gets into really tricky, the providers can't provide us information about each individual. I also think we're demystifying seeing a therapist for some of our staff that have a skewed thought about what that looks like or what that feels like, or what they might experience while they're there. And that experience alone, I think, it's very possible that 2 years from now, we may not make it mandatory and see how many people actually continue to use this service just for a quick check-in or just to talk with somebody one time a year. Mm-hmm. Balancing the usage and making sure that we're investing appropriately. I don't want a program where we've got, all 150 employees of UWPD are using this program because they like it, and there's zero results. Mm-hmm. It's not helping anybody. It's not, it's not leading to better performance. So important to find ways to measure this stuff effectively.
I agree. Yeah. Keep me posted on how you guys do that over time. I'm really interested. My final question for you is, for the younger generation that are coming into this profession today, what words of wisdom would you share with them that maybe has helped you along the way, or something that you wish you would have known earlier?
Yeah, I think two things. One is to get engaged in everything that you can. As I talk with new employees to UWPD, I really tell them, if you want to be a sergeant here, the best way to become a sergeant is be the best police officer you can be today. Show that you can, if you're you love to go do drunk driving enforcement, go do it and master that skill. Just be the best that you can be in that area. Don't settle for mediocrity. Really push yourself to become a master in that thing that you are passionate about. And that will help you throughout your career. So find something that really engages you in the workplace, whether that's community policing, investigations, traffic, whatever that might be. Find that thing that engages you, and then be part of the culture. Too many people, I think, culture to me, I recently wrote a research paper for my master's degree on this. Workplace culture is really hard to define because it's really a feeling, and it's an individual feeling about how you feel about your workplace. Mm. Well, the good thing is we can help reframe our culture. We can help set the tone of our culture. We can help create the culture of our organization by engaging in, I get to be here to do this interview with you today. I got to go to a community meeting. And even though that community meeting didn't go great today, I got to do that. I got to be part of community policing. I got to be part of this strategy to help improve this community. The same is true within our culture. I get to be here at work today to engage with people that I really appreciate and like, and I get to help shape that culture. And thinking about that from a much broader perspective as a new employee at a police department is incredibly important, because I've been there at 7 years. You enjoy your career, and then suddenly you hit this 7-year wall where you're like, what am I doing here? Mm. What is the public hates me, or whatever that negative thought in your mind is. You got to flip that around. Otherwise, there's no point to being in this career. By the time you get to 55 years old and retire, or you leave the career early, you get to decide what that career is like. You get to decide how you approach your career. So get engaged and realize that you can change the culture. You are part of the culture, and you have control over that.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your perspectives on wellness and leadership and culture. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Paige.
Of course.